At home with a lifetime of stories and songs, people we've met and the places we've gone. Along the way found where and how we belong. At home with a lifetime of stories and songs. Welcome to more Songs and Stories from Home, podcasts that give voice to songs with stories and stories with songs written and being written over the course of a lifetime, often illuminating the journey we all make, together and alone, finding our way home. 1968, Part 2. Doors would continue to open on the unimaginable in 1968, both for me and for our country. Mahatma Gandhi is often credited with saying that we should be the change we seek, the change we wish to see in the world. Thanks to some sponsorships and personal fundraising, I had the opportunity to do social work on the Lower East Side in New York City that summer. And while the change I brought to anyone living there at the time may have been small, the change for me was profound and lasting. One of my first days there, I asked one of my roommates, Eddie Gist, a young African-American from the Lower East Side, if he had any thoughts on what I might do while I was there. His answer was better than the question and remains a touchstone for me to this day. The best thing you can do, he said, is to be yourself. The truth of his statement was put to the test soon after. Bill Milliken, who headed the organization I was working with, made arrangements to fly a number of inner city kids to an island off Bermuda for a week. A third were foreign or American-born Chinese, a third were Puerto Rican, and another third African-American. For reasons still unclear, Bill asked me to be the nightly musical entertainment. Few, if any of the kids were familiar with or interested in the songs of a 21-year-old white folk singer from the state of Washington. Though slowly, night after night, we grew more comfortable and familiar with each other. By the end of that week, it somehow felt that while no one got what we thought we wanted, we all got something very real that we hadn't known we needed. We lost another Kennedy. We also lost a king. May dreams outlive the dreamers was our fervent prayer that spring. When Humphrey lost to Nixon, no one heard of Watergate or knew all we had left to lose in 1968. Well, and then we flew back to Seattle, but I planned a summer before my senior year in college to go back to New York City, and thought, change the world? Why not? You know, had a summer, nothing, and so started the University Presbyterian Church. Had put some money in and got some money out of these these different places, and so and then the first place I flew into was Chicago, and I stayed at the YMCA in this little tiny room in one of the upper floors of the YMCA in Chicago, and had a little tiny bed, and it kind of made me think of Dostoevsky, but it was listening and seeing and living and being part of a world that I had never been part of before. And there was, after the training in Chicago, there was one other person going to New York City, and I didn't really know New York City. But and she said, yeah, you can come with me. And I didn't really know exactly. I called, tried to reach the people I was going to be working with, and couldn't really get a hold of them. And so when we landed in New York City, I went with her, and we went up to Harlem. And it was summer. It was June, and we walked along 125th Street, and I mean, different world. A world I could hardly have imagined, much less believed I could have a chance to live in. And we ended up at this walk-up place and walked up, and the guy said, yeah, I'll get in touch with your friends. And I went back in the little room they had, and a black and white TV, and I watched Girls, Girls, Girls by Elvis Presley. I remember just kind of sitting there with a guitar and a suitcase and thinking, oh boy, this is be interesting. And then he got in the car and just said, come with me. And he drove down the FDR Parkway. I had something, again, this is a place this all new to me. This is something. And we went down to 243 East Broadway. The outer door is locked, so this fellow takes his credit card out and puts it in the lock and opens the door. Says, you sit on those steps, your people will be here soon. So I remember sitting on those steps, guitar, suitcase, looking at the world going on outside, and suddenly somebody arrives and welcome, and I was known as the Seattle Kid. So for some reason, the Seattle Kid said, well, yeah, come on upstairs. Walked upstairs, and one of my roommates, Eddie Gist, is a young black man, and some Puerto Ricans so we got 2 bunk beds in a 1-bedroom place, and again, it's pretty exciting. And there's a storefront where this organization is funded by Young Life, and a guy named Bill Milliken is in charge of it, and he's the head, and amazing guy. You can look him up on the internet. He's done amazing things for the last all of these years, but at that time he was working the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and Bill looked at me and he said, okay, well, just go out and just hang out for a while. Hang out for a while. What does that mean? So I went outside and just kind of walked around in this neighborhood. Chinatown, the Bowery, Smith Project, Houston Street, it's just a unbelievable community of life and living that I had never seen before. Elijah Muhammad's newspapers being sold on the street corner. It was amazing. And then we'd gather back at the storefront and got to, okay, this is Bo Nixon and his wife Mary, and this is Dwight Kellogg, and this is Clark Jones, and then we got to know these people, and then suddenly they said, okay, we're leaving for a few days, just hang out. Well, Bill had arranged that there was going to be a leadership time down, and I can't remember whether it was 4 or 5 days or a week, but they were going to a little island off Bermuda, and so I went from kind of getting to know these new people to knowing really nobody, but I was going to hang out and get acquainted with my new neighborhood, and so I went to the storefront where was the headquarters, and after the sort of the afternoon of that first day, I just don't know what to do, and a fellow comes up to me and he introduces me, and my name is Dwight Kellogg. Are you Mark Pearson? Yeah. The Seattle Kid? Yeah. And for the next 3 or 4 days, he takes me around his neighborhood. He knows everybody. Seems like he knows everybody in Chinatown. And on the Bowery, he'd introduce himself to a homeless guy and he'd find out his story, and he'd kind of connect with him, or we'd stop at the Smith projects, and there was young black families that were, and you'd connect with those people, and along the way, every time he'd introduce me as his good friend, and somehow being Dwight's friend kind of made me kind of somebody there, not somebody invisible. And after a few days, I said, "Well, Dwight, you're part of this thing. Why aren't you down? Why aren't you down in that little island off Bermuda?" And I said, "I'm on parole. Can't leave the borough." So I think he said, Rob, can't remember exactly what, but he we all have lives, and this was this fellow's life, but soon I was going to leave the borough because they wanted me to be the music for Bill Milliken had figured out a way to get the money to fly a group of these kids from the inner city down to this little island off Bermuda that had no electricity for a week away from the city, and a third of them were Puerto Ricans, or from Puerto Rico, or Puerto Ricans from the United States, Chinese Americans or foreign born, and then African Americans, and a third each, and they wanted rock and roll or soul music, and I could sing Kumbaya without a bit of irony, or I could sing Mariah, and I'd learned something early on in my first few days from Eddie, my roommate. I said, "Eddie, what can I do here?" And he kind of looked at me and he said, "The most important thing you can do is be yourself." So, went on that plane ride with those kids, got off, got to the little island off Bermuda, and so for 6 days, every night, they had no electricity, so as it was starting to get dark, I'd haul out the guitar, and I'd sing my folk repertoire, and every night these kids would have their flashlights, and "Hey, Elvis," or "Hey, Seattle Kid," "Yeah, hey, man," and so every night I was in the spotlight, kinda, and then every day I was invisible. The only white face there that hadn't, the other white faces had spent years there, had spent time there, were home there, and for me, I was somebody coming from out of town that wanted to make a difference, but they knew I was going to leave. They knew I wasn't staying. So I sang my songs, and then, like I say, in the spotlight, invisible. But I gave it everything I had every night, and by the time at the end of the week, there was some sense that we were all in this together. In fact, we all went to Bermuda together, and we rode the little motorbikes and had these different experiences. And sometimes when I was walking around that little island in the daytime, invisible, a few people saw me and a few people said hi. And I don't think I told Bill, but I couldn't go back to New York with everybody. I needed to go back through Hamilton, Bermuda, had to go through L.A. because the morning ride, we're going to enter the semifinals of your All-American College show. And so I told Bill that I needed to go to L.A. From Bermuda, but then I'd be back in a few days once this TV show had been shot. And I remember Bill saying, "Well, just make sure you come back." And so I said, "Oh, yeah, for sure." And so off it was to L.A. to back on the TV. Thank you for watching or listening to more songs and stories from home. Come back next time for part 3 of 1968, knowing you're welcome here, at home, with a lifetime of stories and songs.